The other story we're covering tonight, this explosive report from the New York Times about Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. He, of course, the one in charge of the Mueller investigation. Times reporters Adam Goldman and Michael Schmidt report that Rosenstein considered secretly recording President Trump and even discussed invoking the 25th Amendment to remove Trump. Goldman and Schmidt write, quote, Mr. Rosenstein made these suggestions in the spring of 17 when Mr. Trump's firing of James Comey as FBI director plunged the White House into turmoil. Mr. Rosenstein made the remarks about secretly recording Mr. Trump and about the 25th Amendment in meetings and conversations with other Justice Department and FBI officials. Several people described the episodes in interviews over the past several months. The people were briefed either on the events themselves or on memos written by FBI officials, including Andrew McCabe, then the acting bureau director. The article continues, quote, none of Mr. Rosenstein's proposals apparently came to fruition. It is not clear how determined he was about seeing them through, though he did tell Mr. McCabe he might be able to persuade Attorney General Jeff Sessions and John Kelly, then the Secretary of Homeland Security, now the White House Chief of Staff, to mount an effort to invoke the 25th. The Times report adds that Rosenstein was serious in raising the idea of wearing a wire himself to secretly record the president somehow, and that he mentioned it on a different occasion. Justice Department officials tell NBC News that Rosenstein's remarks were not meant seriously. According to a senior DOJ official at a meeting on May 16 of 2017, quote, Rosenstein was arguing with Andrew McCabe about the president, according to a senior Justice Department official. Well, what do you want me to do, Andy? Wear a wire? Rosenstein asked at the meeting, which also included FBI lawyer Lisa Page and 4 career DOJ officials, according to this senior official. This official and a source who was in the room characterized Rosenstein's remark as sarcastic. Another person in that meeting tells NBC News that Rosenstein was making a serious comment. And the aforementioned senior DOJ official also tells NBC News that there was a brief mention of the 25th Amendment within a note written later by former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, and that Rosenstein did not raise the matter. Tonight, Rosenstein released this statement, quote, I never pursued or authorized recording the president, and any suggestion that I have ever advocated for the removal of the president is absolutely false. Andrew McCabe's attorney has also responded to the Times account, which cited his memos. In a statement that reads in part, the attorney says McCabe, quote, gave all of his memos, classified and unclassified, to the special counsel's office. A set of those memos remained at the FBI at the time of his departure, late January of 18. He has no knowledge of how any member of the media obtained those memos. McCabe, you'll recall, fired earlier this year after relentless attacks by the president in an apparent effort to discredit the Bureau's work on the Russia investigation. During a rally in Springfield, Missouri earlier this evening, the president had this to say about federal law enforcement.
Just look at what is now being exposed in our Department of Justice and the FBI. Look at what's going on. Look at what's going on. And I want to tell you, we have great people in the Department of Justice. We have great people. These are people, I really believe, you take a poll, I got to be at 95%. But you had some real bad ones. You've seen what's happened at the FBI. They're all gone. They're all gone. They're all gone. But there's a lingering stench, and we're going to get rid of that, too.
On that note, joining us to talk about it by telephone, Michael Schmidt, Pulitzer Prize-winning Washington correspondent with the New York Times, and happens to be co-author of this Times article in question. So, Michael, you chose to focus on these 8 days in 2017. Remind us how alarmed Rod Rosenstein was at that period and what heightened his alarm.
Well, Rosenstein was unnerved. He had played a significant role in the Comey firing. He had provided the memo the White House used as the rationale for it, saying that Comey had been too harsh on Hillary Clinton and had handled that investigation incorrectly. Then Rosenstein was being criticized sharply for basically helping create what was believed to be a fake story about why they fired him. And Rosenstein sort of lost it. He became unnerved. He was very emotional. He was very upset. He said things that were at times irrational and didn't didn't really add up with what was going on around him. In that period of time, he discussed two things that we found particularly interesting. One of them was about wiring a wire, and the other one was about the 25th Amendment. For us, this provided a window into what was going on at the Justice Department at this crucial time as the Justice Department made the ultimate decision, the extraordinary decision of appointing a special counsel to investigate the President of the United States.
Michael, how long have you been reporting out this story? Weeks, months?
We've been looking at this issue for months. This is sort of the time forgot. The period has been overlooked because it ends with Mueller being appointed and the story goes in an entirely new direction. But we've been looking at this for months and trying to figure out what happened there. And when we felt comfortable with the information that we had, we moved forward with our story.
In light of Rosenstein's second denial, the statement we quoted just a few minutes ago was statement number 2, put out subsequently tonight. Because it's all about context, are you certain, you and your co-author, that you got the context right on serious versus sarcasm?
Yes, and there's a particular reason why. In the meeting, Rosenstein was asked, "Are you serious?" And he said, "Yes, I am," and then proposed wiring up FBI officials who were going in to meet with the president to be the FBI director. Now, other folks have gone for the notion that this was sarcastic, it was just a joke, but Rosenstein also brought it up later in the day. Those two pieces of information led us to a point where we said, look, this was a serious thing, and that's the reason why we wrote the story the way we did.
The 25th Amendment doesn't apply. Everybody knew who Donald Trump was when they elected him. I didn't vote for him. I voted against him. People voted for him. But he hasn't changed in office, and this idea of diagnosing him instead of opposing him politically poses an enormous danger.
Well, he was arguably one of the most vetted candidates to ever run for office in public life. The left went after him. But the president, he's even pointed out himself, this is not the first time the left has gone at Republicans. They did the same thing to Barry Goldwater. They did the same thing to Ronald Reagan.
Right.
What is it about Republican presidents that leads the left to say, we don't just disagree with your policies, you must be crazy?
Well, you know, I think over 1,000 psychiatrists diagnosed Barry Goldwater and said he was mentally ill. They were then rebuked by the American Psychiatric Association and said, do not make diagnoses without seeing the patient. And they continue to do it today. Look, about Ronald Reagan, they had a point. He was perhaps beginning to develop Alzheimer's. We have a 25th Amendment for that. But the 25th Amendment is not supposed to be invoked if you don't like somebody's politics or you don't like his style. Vote against him. The 25th Amendment requires the vice president to invoke this, and then it requires 2/3 of both houses. It's not going to happen. It's designed for people who are totally incompetent, not people who you disagree with.